Marketing for Business podcast.
Awesome. Thanks very much for having me.
Mate, awesome. Hey, look, I know we met each other probably about 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
I think you'd just taken on the role of head engagement at Canterbury Rugby. You also you had your own business at the time. Where Canterbury, that's still going. You've evolved that recently.
Yeah, it definitely has evolved quite a bit, I suppose. We started it, I guess, before COVID, and then wondered what was going to happen at the time. And at the time, it was really a case of me, having left TVNZ and kind of coming out of the media industry a little bit to a degree, and sort of believing that if you could provide people an opportunity to tell their own story in their own words, that you'd get a better response, as opposed to the kind of media industry at the time was based on volume, largely based on volume. And it just didn't really fit well for us. So we started that with the support of Canterbury Rugby, cricket, hockey, basketball.
Nice.
It was a really cool sort of setup. Then we ran into a bit of COVID, and we learned really quickly that live streaming and technology was starting to really catch on. And the opportunity to bring kind of broadcast principles to live streaming added a different dynamic to what the industry was going to bring. So 2018, I think it was 2019, we'd already done a pre-season game for Crusaders versus Hurricanes down at Ashburton, streamed it to Facebook, and 480,000 people watched it.
Very good.
Which is largely more than what most people the numbers are on Sky when they watch an in-season game. So we knew that technology was going to get better. We knew the principles were there. So subsequently it's evolved, and we at Canterbury, it's become a company called T2, which effectively stood for Tier 2 broadcast. And then we're now just in the throes of merging with another group in the Hawke's Bay. And so we've got broadcast operations basically up and down the country now.
Good.
We do a lot of remote broadcasting. Again, the technology is getting better and better, and so that's really evolved from a side hustle to something we're now having to take a bit more seriously.
So good. And that's one of the reasons I want to have you on today, because look, my audience here is business owners, right? And I'm always telling them, man, you need to get on camera, you need to be in front of the camera, you need to be going live, doing things. And I think some of the principles that you learnt in your broadcast world, because you're a real expert in that media game, and we have some great stories we're going to share about, media and what to do, etc. But like, the technology is evolving, right? And I think as a business owner, you've really got to get in front of it today. Look, how have you seen media change over the last probably, even in the last 6 months, the game's changed? How have you seen it change over the last maybe 5 years?
Yeah, or massively. It's probably an understatement too, and depends on where you look at it. If you used mainstream media as an example, the teams that take to create a 6 o'clock bulletin, for example, you could be talking 50, 60, 70 people a day. Now you might be making one, and obviously Stuff are going to launch themselves into what was TV3 and News Hub, and they'll be making that with 20 people shortly, or less. There'll be other ways of getting content. For a long, long time, it was $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 cameras, and it was a camera operator, and it was an editor, and it was a journalist, and there were multiple people in the story. Now half the time it's someone snapped it on an iPhone and flicked it through, and it's there, and people take it. Like I remember the day actually we were heading out. I've been in sport for a long time, so you'd always watch what news we're doing, but heading out to a sporting event in North Canterbury, collected the story, came back, weather was starting to happen at the time. So everyone was running around trying to get the camera operators to be out shooting weather. And then at the end of the night came around. So there would have been thousands of dollars of resource spent on weather stories for that day. But what happened is the fastest things that got back into the newsroom were shots off people's phones. So all of a sudden the stories just became about stuff off people's phones. And probably the best shot was one of the particular reporters in the car filming how fast the window wipers were having to go, what I still couldn't see. So you spend thousands and thousands of dollars, which actually would have just bought you an iPhone, Samsung, or whatever you want, and you got it done, one and done. So the speed of things is, you're either first or you have to be the best, and equally the way that kind of media law works in New Zealand is you can beg, borrow and steal anything off anybody. They're different laws to other parts of the world. New Zealand and Australia have a wee set of rules there that basically say if it's newsworthy that you can use it, a certain amount of it at your discretion. You have to quote them and other things, but you don't have to be the original source of it. So that allows everybody to kind of have an element of media without worrying too much about what everyone else is doing, sometimes to the detriment of things that happen in New Zealand. But it's changed massively. You can do so much on your own, and we're you think now creating content, you can basically put it into an app and it'll create a video for you, or it'll do a reel, or it'll put it to the place that you want it to go, and so you don't have to be an expert anymore.
Well, and the interesting thing there, the game changed 2007. iPhone came out, right? Like that was really the thing, especially even in marketing. This thing called the iPhone comes out, and people start going, man, it's got like everything a camera has, and then the how that's evolved even over the last 20 years, not 14 years, 15 years. It's crazy, right? How the technology inside these things. So now, someone like even my team, they have more power in the iPhone than we do have in these cameras that we're shooting here with as well, right? It's crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And when you think camera operators or camera companies, whether it be Samsung or whatever else, are producing phones at the same time. But yeah, absolutely. I remember in about 2011 going out and buying a new Samsung at the time because of the power that the cameras had in it. It was way more interesting than the fact that I needed to be on the phone talking back to Radio Live or Radio New Zealand or someone from across the world. The main criteria was how good was the camera and therefore the processing of it.
Do you think like, guys like yourself, that you've created your own kind of media companies now to some degree with was it Broadcast Live that you Engage Live? What was the...
It's now called Engage Live,
You kind of like leveled the playing field, Has technology allowed you to level the playing field when it comes to competing against... Because at the end of the day, like if you wanted to get on TV years ago, you had to like pretty much know people to get on, right? Like there's no way you could go live and broadcast yourself. You had to be on those stations. But now, like you have your own station, and it's crazy.
It's interesting. I remember years ago a phrase that came up was "content is king."
Yeah.
And it's still very, very, very true today. If you're in the right place at the right time and doing the piece that you want, it's a little bit like if you and. Those that still watch 6 o'clock news, invariably the person that's got the big picture up on the weather wall is a guy, George Epson, out of Tekapo, because he takes beautiful photos. But I don't even know if TVNZ's ever paid him for it. He just constantly sends in content. And his name's at the bottom of it, and he gets himself there. And the same principle applies to creating your own content, talking to your own audience, doing all of those sorts of things. Absolutely, technology is a massive leveler. And even the cost to it, like you think, for example, the same thing, in no disrespect to your camera at all, but it's a significantly smaller to what TVNZ operate with or TV3, but it's basically doing the same thing. So your entry to market is pretty cheap.
And I think that's probably what's caught people up to is that speed of that technology. It really has kind of gone, and people have switched off from maybe watching the news. They're getting their news in different ways. They get it on their phone, or they get it on their laptop or whatever. So consumption's changed as well. And maybe I reckon this is the opportunity for business owners to meet the market where they are. Like the clients that we see successful are the ones going out and filming the video on their iPhone, and getting it out into the marketplace, and then letting the marketplace decide, versus we've got all this production,
100%. Yeah, you can see production can slow you down quite often. And invariably when you're first, there's an element of forgiveness around quality as well. If you can give somebody something that they need a whole lot faster than somebody else, they don't care that it's a bit dusty or it's windy or it's whatever else. As long as it's in the right place at the right time with the right kind of integrity to it, I think people would consume it, absolutely.
How did you get started in this whole media game? I know you worked for a number of different organisations, but where's your passion for it come from?
Well, it's for sport, first and foremost. So I think that that high performance element to it is really cool. I really enjoy that side of it. I got a opportunity. I used to do lots of sideline coaching. I played rugby and basketball and that growing up to a fair degree. And then I got an opportunity to study radio. Paid for by a group at the time that I was going to go back and spend some time with them. Didn't really enjoy working with them, so I actually paid back my scholarship and went and basically got a job with TV3 the next day and Radio Live, and I did everything. I used to effectively be on minimum wage, but you'd turn up and do it, get your foot in the door, and then you'd work double shifts and you'd do all of those things that made it work, and then someone would offer you an opportunity to go and flip sausages for More FM or something else. On whatever hours you had free and available, and you made it work. And you just carried on. I took the opportunity in 2011, 2012 to head to the UK and start our own business up there, because I'd been up 4 or 5 times during that year and kind of worked out that the cost of me going up and down 4 or 5 times was significantly greater than me just being there. Probably tried to solve a solution for some
Yeah. What was that?
for some media. The reality was the cost. It was the same as I could work for Radio Live or TV3 or any of those guys, and
Yeah.
they could pay you for a portion for the time, or they need media when they need it, but they don't need you there all of the time.
Yeah.
But it became easier just to say yes for them when I only charged them for a portion of it, or I worked out how to fill the rest of my time and my money than being a full-time staff member or things like that for them. So, yeah, that was really the foot in the door I got with Radio Live, and then which subsequently became TV3, and then.
What did you learn most there? Like, what were you learning? Because that would have been pretty. That was like, I guess in the days where. Pretty new. Everything was pretty new, but pretty exciting. Like I know I'm talking to some radio people and some TV people. Everything was pretty like it was good times, right?
Yeah, I guess there's probably a couple of things in that. One was how many times can you repackage the same product and sell it again and again and again?
Yeah.
I started off doing radio, and then I worked out where you use those quotes and you put it into a written story so that you could sell the same story twice. And then I went, well, what if I learn how to use a camera? I can film it, and then I can strip the audio off it, and then I can write stories. So all of a sudden, if I went to an All Blacks press conference, I could sell it 3 times.
3 times.
Then I could potentially do a live report to somebody else being on the spot as well, so I could sell it 4 times. And the story is the story for the day, so it doesn't change. So so repackaging that.
And was there a thirst for that product? Like people wanted that? Like there,
100%. Yeah, and as I say, I became a whole heap cheaper because you didn't discount the product so low that 4 times you were only getting 25% out of it, but you didn't have to charge 100% of it.
Yeah, because you had 4 other.
So you might find that you could charge somebody 2/3 of the cost of them having their own person there, but they still get it. It's a cost saving for them, so you problem solve for them, and then you got yourself there, and then you just continue to develop those relationships. I suppose that was the other part to what I learned up there is, your relationship, especially in sport, is massive.
Yeah.
And the only thing you've got to go on is your word and how you've got to be able to front up again tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's a bit different to turning up to court or to a car accident or something like that in news, because invariably you won't see those people ever again.
Yeah.
But in sport, you might have to see those same people on Thursday or. I used to actually have a wee test for myself. So it used to be called the supermarket test. And if I wasn't comfortable walking down the aisle, or I thought somebody else would be uncomfortable walking down and saying hello to me, then I didn't do the story.
How good.
And so, that really became my I guess principle for life a little bit of maintaining integrity. And sometimes you'll have to do shitty stories. There's no doubt about it. But you do it so people are aware of it rather than sneaking around behind their back.
No surprises. It's interesting. I read a great book during the holidays, the last Christmas holidays, around Wayne Bennett and him and the media had a love-hate relationship. They reckon he had his certain people that he'd always throw the questions to and stuff, but you could tell that some people were just there to get under him, and to rile him up and that sort of stuff. And I guess I like the supermarket test because end of the day we're humans. I guess media people sometimes are seen, especially in that space where they're trying to get someone to rack up. They're seen as maybe a little bit antagonistic and doing it because they want that clickbait side of things. But I think one of the things I think more people want is just those real stories, and I think that's the kind of 100%. Maybe the media has forgotten about that to some degree.
Well, and I think that goes back to when we first started We Are Canterbury. The model was broken. Certainly, I believe still is broken, but the brokenness to it is their revenue models are based on volume, not value.
Yeah.
So what we tried to do at that point was to offer value, and we had some great stories. There's some great ambassadors, Jane Watson, Tom Walsh, Henry Nichols, those guys that literally said, well, we'll tell our story through you, and you get to sign it off, you do all those things, and then therefore we'll deliver better stories. It becomes a time thing, and then it's equally hard to monetize in a sense that how much or how many eyeballs or whatever your mechanism is for monetization is how does somebody else pay for that and know that they've got value, because the value between that story and A story and B story might be quite different.
Yeah.
Whereas absolutely clicks becomes something really easy to measure, doesn't it? So I think that's where that's landed, but it's unfortunately there's not enough, or it's just it's a common psyche that negative stories attract you. It's like watching a car crash, and you
Yeah,
drive
yeah.
past, you just have to watch it,
Yeah.
no matter how much you like.
Yeah, exactly. Relationships, you mentioned that. That's a big word for me. It's a big thing for me. I really believe in the depth of connection versus the width of connection, and going deep. What are some of the relationships you really treasure from your years in the media game? Any particular sporting people and stuff like that that you really enjoyed interviewing or being around?
Yeah, I've got lots, really. I think lots of people and seen them in some really precarious positions. Been with on lots of tours, Kiwis tours, All Blacks tours, equestrian, been at Olympics, Paralympics, those sorts of things, and you see people in some very vulnerable times, both winning and losing. I guess lots of things. Yeah, Jock Paget's a really, really good mate of mine now. I was with him when his horse got done for doping.
Oh, true.
Latterly was proven that it was not administered by him knowingly, but to go through those times was really challenging.
Especially when someone's trained that long for that moment,
Totally.
and to have it taken away must be pretty devastating. You'd be pretty low, right?
Yeah, and he went on to create some great success in the future, but it was probably, he's back here now in New Zealand and things changed for his family and stuff, but it was, had he been able to stay riding for the best part of another 12 or 18 months at that time, he probably still would be in the UK competing and winning and doing all those things. But yeah, lots, some good mates in the New Zealand hockey team. I guess I know a fair bit about a number of All Blacks and bits and pieces that never ever see the media, or we've developed some really great relationships with the likes of Richie, having spent lots of time with him in the All Blacks, but then gone on to Coast and God's Own and a few other events that I was heavily involved with. That when you peer out of the bush at 2:00 in the morning to start filming somebody on God's Own, they have a different kind of level of respect for you. And some of it's time, absolutely. You talk about perception in media or people, sort of not liking each other. Well, all of a sudden, once they start to learn that you're human and you have a job to do all those other things, and you do it with the utmost amount of respect. And so there's an example of that with Richie and God's Own, and we was at in Nelson. I remember jumping in a bloody dinghy and going way out, 15 or 16 kilometres out around the peninsula to find him, to then get a shot of him coming back again. And I remember just looking across saying, "Hey mate, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry I've turned up on the course again to get another shot of you." And he just smiled and said, "It's all cool. We carry on going and get to the finish line and we talk again." And he realises that that's also part of his who he is and the persona that he is. But sometimes you definitely feel for the person on the other side of the camera.
For the camera.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's pretty, as you say, respectful, and I think that's the coolest part about it. Over time, when you show that your true colours, that you're here to actually capture those moments, and you're actually there to tell the story versus, just tell parts of the story. And I think that's probably what a lot of people, get upset with these days is not hearing the full story. When you look at when I just said the coast to coast, I was like, how good, that's an icon event. So you were in charge of the media there as well?
Yeah, we had was 6 or 7 years with it, and then came involved with Richard Usher when he sort of first took over. Had done it a number of times when I was at TVNZ, covering it when Juddy had it, and that was a really interesting thing. We went from struggling to get 450 people to turn up on the start line to when I finished up a year and a half, 2 years ago now, it sells out 1,400 odd people. It sells out with about 3 times as many people on the wait list, and I think I remember it was about 4 minutes one time it sold out in that fast. So there's been a big renaissance with that. Partly, let's all say great marketing, but I think what Glenn and Richard and the subsequent race directors have done, and the wider team, they've made it a really wholesome event. Made it one that's achievable for lots of people. But a big thing we had in that space was we need to tell the story of the Joe blogs, the people doing it, and we had a really big focus on increasing female participation and also the offshore, the Australian market for a while. So that was absolutely just tell the stories of the people that can do it, and then it often has a really big flow-on effect.
What was that decision made? Like what?
Well, I think it's really easy for 40-plus males to be confident that they can go do the coast to coast, but it's not for you're not me either. But a lot of mums, I suppose, sort of lacking in confidence isn't the right word, but just need a little bit of convincing to say, actually, you can do this is definitely there. And we saw a big increase in that. And some of them have time that they can spread in between. I've got a lot of mums that are doing some school drop-offs and bits and pieces and could potentially go and train for 2 or 3 hours and come back again.
And then, so did you see an increase of...
Absolutely. Yeah, we went from about 8% females up to early 20s.
Nice.
Over a 4 or 5 year period. But yeah, absolutely.
But very intentional, right?
100%.
I love the fact that you told these stories. I remember my mate did the Coast to Coast. I remember him telling me that he went to the function afterwards, and I'm thinking a mum got up and she said, "If I can do it, anyone can do it." And he was like, "Wow, that's so cool!" What a great. And I was thinking about that as you just started telling the stories. I was like, man, that they're the things you want to capture because, as you say, it gives other people belief that they can do it,
Yeah, there's an old saying in marketing, isn't it? If he can see it, he can be it, or if she can see it, she can be it. So, and that was definitely our bit was, to your point, if your mate's sitting there saying, if she can do it, well, I can, that flow and effect has happened both with males and females. Yeah. Whereas often when a male says he can do it, the females don't quite feel that same level of connection. So, that was absolutely why there was a deliberate approach to, trend to tell more female stories in that space.
And the good thing about it is you stuck with it over a period of time. A lot of people get into marketing or they think, I've got this concept, and they get a sugar rush at the start, and then they start something, and then it's not going as well as we think. But they just don't have it. They haven't given themselves enough bandwidth to let it sink in and let it percolate. And then when I always say consistency, message plus frequency reach great relevancy, all of a sudden, someone's said to someone, "Oh, we should do the Coast to Coast," or they see someone else doing it, and all of a sudden you become relevant.
Yeah, my whole marketing principles, and even whether it's your brand story, whether it's whatever, I think for a majority of the time you need to have a two-pronged attack. Approach anyway. You need to have obviously short measurable stuff is really, really important, but if you're not out there on a regular basis for the long term telling all of those good parts of your story, then you can't possibly have long sustained success. And I think that's the cool part for us now about Coast, for example, was if I go back 6 or 7 years and say 450 struggling to get to the start line to now, we're into we're going into the 4th year of selling out.
Do you reckon 450 struggling, was that just because it was seen as a bit of an elitist event, or it didn't have the same aura around, because now it does sell out, right? And so what was the massive change here? Was it kind of just focusing on...
Oh, it had definitely become about the elites. Yeah. And that was absolutely part of Juddy's storytell, was to create this kind of real wild competition that you must be kind of slightly crazy to go and do. And that was his, Gurney and Jody and that used to do some crazy sort of marketing, and they did a fantastic job hosting media and other parts, but it was absolutely around that one-day competition. Yeah. Richard made some changes when he first came in. They all of a sudden brought in, 3-person team. They've done a number of other things that expand it. Because the thing with that too is, if you can get a taste for it, it was a mountain run. Yeah, became one part. So, you can go and run that tomorrow and not pay any money. Yeah, but then you still turn up and pay a couple of $100 and do it on the day. So the day's amazing. You've got this vibe, but you do the mountain run, and then all of a sudden you go, oh gee, maybe I could do the 2-day, or maybe I could do a team, or So it's almost like a bit of a buffet of entry levels, and that was definitely brought in by Richard. Richard did a really good job of that, and then so Glenn's just carried that on with a few extra things. And we started a 3-person one-day team a couple of years ago, again to add that element of hype and get a few. Could you have the best cyclist and the best kayaker and the best runner as a team? All of a sudden, again, that was giving us another reason to be in the media, or another reason for someone to take care or think about us. So that was a little bit evolutionary, I suppose, or just evolving based on the things that you could or should do. Because even there, I think we had 40 or 50 spots available. It was do we just add them back to teams, or do we do something different? And that was definitely hey, let's do something different and see what happens.
A great example of giving people reasons to buy, giving them products that they can buy. If you're a business owner, you just hear that. It was going good. Coast to Coast was going good, 450 people, but then started to maybe waver a little bit. Then they added more to it. you know, changed the messaging a little bit, framed it a little bit differently, but then also gave what I call taste the ice cream, you know, so you can actually come and do one little part of that event. Oh, I like that. Maybe I'll do the next one next year. Maybe I'll bring in all these 3 people and we'll do a team, you know, like how cool is that? So adding more to it allowed you to expand to the point where 1,400 people selling out in sometimes 4 minutes. That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, and you can do a couple of things with it, right? There's only so many people who can go past. That's the deal with Doc. So that governs the number of people you can have there. The other part becomes, you know, it's effectively a two-way road, but you're all going in one direction. So the more cars you put on there, the more stress comes with everything else. We want to be sustainable, do all those sorts of things. So there's a really important message of what you can get to. Can we get more out of it by increasing the cost of it all the time? Over a period of time, and I think you can, absolutely, but over a period of time, you'll then be seen as being too expensive as well. So, adding a few of those extra touch points, monetizing as many things as possible, but ensuring that the overarching experience is still a really positive one is still really important to keep in the back of your mind.
You mentioned high performance and your love for high performance. Where did that come from? Why do you like high performance? I personally, I really like high performance. I was having a coach call with a coach this morning in America, all about high performance. Absolutely love it. You know, like I like being around high performing people. What is it for you?
I hate losing.
Yeah.
I'm a really sore loser. And I think the other part is I love to be measured and my work ethic versus somebody else's work ethic.
Yeah, nice.
I literally talk to my kids about that like daily. If you want to learn the guitar and someone plays 30 minutes and you're prepared to pay 45 minutes, well, how much better can you be? You know, if you want to go and study a language and the more effort you put in. And it was interesting. I had a similar time with that when I was at TVNZ. You know, we used to get paid our salary and I was doing more stories than lots of people in our wider team. And I literally said to my bosses at the time, I was like, I'd rather go on a per story basis. Because the reality is the more stories I do, the less time you have to fill, right? So I was like, well, so just pay me for it. And then I'll do more stories. But they didn't have the model then, and I still don't think they do. But I think that part. The other part invariably is, especially with sport, most sports other than the Olympics are not a one-off. So in rugby or netball or whatever else, invariably you go week. So you get that opportunity to play. Train, play, review. And review is a really big part of what you're doing, making sure you've done the research into why we won or why we lost or the next part. And I think that ability to make changes and adjust and then get measured again is cool. And I think that's probably the key part. I'm not the best sports person at all, whereas I think I go right at media. So I can bring high performance principles to a team. That's probably what I love about high performance sport is still being able to play my part and what I'm good at inside a team is really exciting.
And I guess when you're even being part of you're the comms and media side for some of these teams, and you have to bring a level of high performance to that, right? Like they're performing at a level. There's no point the person doing the media and comms not being at that level, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the key. But there's a really interesting thing at the moment around the use of media and high performance sport. For me, the reason there's two parts to it. One, a lot of people think that because you are asking the public to part with their money each week, then therefore you should be accountable to those people. And I get that. I totally get it. But so is Air New Zealand, and the CEO of Air New Zealand doesn't do press conferences every week. No. So it's an old model that potentially needs an element of adjustment. Do you have to justify losing every week? No. But it is the game at the moment, right? So then it's about being
smart. It is
smarter.
crazy though, because the fans, you think the fans own the team, like especially when you see, and it's probably come from British football, like they're probably one of the worst at it, but sorry to cut you off there because I just think it's ridiculous, how
100%. But players don't like doing it.
No,
invariably don't like doing it at all because again, it's almost like walking into what do you call it? You know, when anyone's been shooting at you. And you're just standing there taking a barrage of questions and things like that. So everyone thinks it's cool when you're winning, but it kind of sucks when you're losing. But equally, that's my job in the media space, is to make sure that my guys are aware of what's coming, almost preempt what all those questions are. Hey, here's some ways that you can think about it. I hate the kind of scripted element to it, and I have a real philosophy around be yourself and have those conversations, but don't shy away from the tough questions, but be really intentional around pushing your own point when you've got that opportunity to say what you're doing or how you're doing it, or remind people of maybe the good stuff you're doing. And nobody goes out there to lose. Like, nobody goes out there to intentionally lose, but for some reason people take joy in painting that as a picture. And unfortunately, someone has to lose, right?
Well, especially in sport, right? And that's I guess the hard part of it is everyone's out there. I remember back in the day playing sport, you're out there training, maybe 3-4 times a week. You don't turn up on a Saturday to not go good, but sometimes other teams just go better than you, right? And totally. It must be pretty. Everyone loves it when we're winning. Especially in Canterbury, like we've had such a good time with Crusaders, etc. We've had a run. If you haven't won money off the TAB for the last 7-8 years, you got hammered this year, but you must admit you had a good run. You know who I'm talking about. So I guess that from your perspective though, you were there to preempt. What are some of the things that you've seen people do wrong, or like some of the stories that you've had to really pick up and kind of get back on track? Have you had any things that stand out for you?
I've had a couple of doozies. The key part really when you get trapped in that space is to take the time it takes. Don't be forced into somebody else's deadline. If you don't, and journalists do a really good job at pushing you towards 6 o'clock, or I've got to hear from this, or I've got to do that, I've got to do that. The other part to that is when you say nothing, it creates a vacuum and it allows other people that opportunity. So be clear and be decisive and make things happen. I can definitely talk about it because it was a really public thing. I remember being on a plane. We'd just lost. I was with the Kiwis at the time. We'd lost in Canberra the night before. And then I was standing on the plane about to fly back to New Zealand, and then got a call from an ABC journalist to say, hey, 2 of your players were seen with a Class A substance last night. What can you say about it? I literally was standing in the aisle trying to get seated at the time. Asked for a bit of information, so I got as much information from him as I possibly could. And then I called the CEO and the coach whilst being told to sit down on the plane and get going, and gave them all the information that I could, explain that I was flying to Sydney, then to Auckland, that I would prepare a statement based on all the information that I knew at the time. I would then circulate it amongst the group once we landed. At that time, they should have been on the phone and done a bit more investigation. And then we would then circulate our response at that point. When I landed, the CEO at the time had decided to fire off a statement himself, which talked about swift and harsh punishment and all these other things. So talked about the response before that even, or how they were going to respond before they even knew what was
the real story.
Totally. Wow. So there's lots of things in there. Acknowledge. You always want to acknowledge that the situation's gone on and be honest as you can, but don't be fooled into somebody else's deadline, because what that subsequently did is it backed the coach and everybody else into selection issues for that. So then that led into the World Cup, and then the World Cup just couldn't get traction. Traction with the general public, and then subsequently the wheels fell off, and we lost to Fiji. And, we did. It was one of those ones that really felt like you were on a slow moving train about to crash, and you just couldn't get off.
And that's that I guess one person's decision, obviously 2 people's decision to start with, but when you think back on that, what could you have done differently?
Oh, heaps. Yeah, absolutely. And I do now. It was really interesting, and funny enough, he's obviously just gone on to become the All Blacks coach, but I had a really good session with Razor when I came home from that, and we talked a lot about what ifs. What if this happened, or what if that happened, or how would you react? And everything that I do now, even that, I just one of my staff members at the moment is just heading away to Sydney, and we joked about it. I said to her early on, well, what if someone had a heart attack on a game? Well, how would you react? And she thought I was crazy. I was like, no, but one day it'll happen.
Yeah.
Like one day it'll happen, something will happen. How would you react?
Yeah.
Who's the hierarchy? Who makes the decision? Who's ringing the police? Who's doing all those things? So yeah, we go through, or I go through so many more what ifs and
Yeah.
get prepared for those sorts of things,
Yeah.
and ask the ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because it's, and you might get laughed out of a room, but it's that time then to have a conversation or even start thought.
Yeah.
Because even if you thought about it, you're 50% better off when it happens, right? So,
totally. And in business, we call it the ripcord strategy. Like let's ripcord. What's the disaster? How do we handle that? Can we handle that? Let's have a plan for that. And then hope it never happens. But hey, we've got something here. And here's our things that we're doing. Most people never go into it.
Yeah, 100%. And the key parts with lots of business, you can hide a lot of that, right? Especially if your business isn't talking to media 2 or 3 times a week and doing all those sorts of things. So that becomes a lot simpler to manage, but I would still want to be prepared for it. Yeah. We do that with all of our broadcast stuff. What happens if somebody breaks a leg halfway through a game, all of a sudden the camera's out or graphics aren't working or all those sorts of things. So would that person do 2 jobs, or we just have to take one out? So yeah, I think those what ifs and being prepared, even documented. I've got a lot of them documented. They just sit in an Excel spreadsheet that sits in the top drawer, and I don't look at it too often.
Yeah, that's good. It's good, but it's good to be there, right? What's the number one thing you learned from Scotty Robertson?
Probably be yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to be different. He's off the wall different, right? Yeah. And probably the other part, I think one of his big bits of success is surround yourself with other people that don't think the same, but have a common sort of goal and a common way of doing things. He's clearly got a wee team that he's really tight with, and doesn't sway too far from that.
Yeah. We heard him speak at we're part of Inspire Foundation. You met Jake the other day on the plane. We're part of the group that brings it all together. And Scotty Robertson spoke there. It was really interesting to hear him talk about language. And I found it really interesting. The Super Rugby teams really struggled to go to South Africa, and the word that was flying around all the time was jet lag. And then they just decided, hey, we're going to ban that word for a start, okay, and we're going to decide to be the best travelling Super Rugby team going to South Africa. And so all of a sudden, like they just reframed what was everyone's Achilles, reframed it, banned a word, and then they started finding ways to be the number one travelling team in Super Rugby history. And I just thought, how good, like language, and that thinking, as you said, like thinking differently, being prepared to raise that bar, raise that standard.
Yeah, so just you hadn't really thought about it at all, but I coach a little rugby team myself, and they do pretty well. But our 2 goals for the year are to be the best tackling team and the best passing team.
Yeah.
So don't talk about try scoring, and don't talk about defence. But in order to be the best defensive team, you need to make tackles right. Yeah. And in order to score tries, you need to pass the ball. So focus on those other bits that have got people away from worrying about winning and losing.
Yeah. So good, and that's great for kids, right? I always said when I was coaching a cricket team, my young fellas team, I'd say, right, what are our goals today? Our goals is to get the most catches and run the most singles. Yeah. How many singles we run, how many catches we make. And the rest, the rest just took care of. Effort areas, man. It's so easy to get caught up on some of those other things that really aren't that important. Well, they're important, but you need to focus on the small things, and I think that's one of the coolest parts. Hey, so you've obviously, over the years, you've evolved what you're doing and bringing some of your passion into it. So you recently, you've said you just left the role at Canterbury, you the head of engagement, and moving on to do more of your own stuff.
Yeah, we've got I've loved my time at Canterbury, and one of the reasons that I really enjoyed being there was it's a 146-year-old brand. How often do you get to play around with it? And I've designed apparel for the last couple of years and marketing campaigns and bits and pieces. And a big piece of that, the apparel thing for me was going back to an old book that I love by Owen Eastwood about belonging.
Brilliant. Yeah, nice.
And a big thing that stood out for me at that point was, the mongrel mob. They put on a jacket and they feel part of the team. Yeah. Same thing for me. If the Canterbury Rugby jersey doesn't look and feel and talk the way that it should, then how do you expect people to connect with it? Yeah. So that was one part. But to move from there was, our business now is kind of sitting at I guess not a tipping point, but if we want to take it to the next level, it needs more time spent in it. And I am probably the person to spend the time in it. You know, I'm really passionate about sustainability element to it. I think something we've got the technology side down to such a small part that once people wake up to the fact that we can help you reduce your carbon emissions and all sorts of other stuff, but still do the same, still broadcast a game and people at home would never know, as opposed to our competitors. Because some of our competitors are still driving around in 10, 12, $14 million trucks. You know, they're literally moving around in a couple of suitcases to produce the same stuff. So that'll exist there. And yeah, I think absolutely. I started it to prove a point. I've kind of proven the point. I thought about just shelving it. But it would, as my brother said the other day, what an idiot. Like, why don't you prove it?
Why did you think you should shelving it?
Just it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. It's probably just getting yourself to the point of being able to reset that next goal. And I kind of, it's been a side hustle, I suppose, for a long time. And maybe it's just, being brave enough to,
go full on.
Have a crack and push it to the next level. And
obviously the market's there, right? Like
100%. And the market will continue to evolve. And there's so many points that are shifting you towards that at the moment. You know, for example, netball is not sustainable in New Zealand under the current broadcast model. Basketball's trying something different. Rugby won't be sustainable in the same space. So what changes? So the cost has to change. The cost to produce the product has to change. And we might be, 35% of what some of our competitors are at the moment. Between tier 1 and tier 2. So you're definitely not measuring complete apple with apple, but the cost difference is going to continue to change and get better. So there's lots of reasons to point that in the future this will be a fantastic business and where it'll get to. I guess the key part is maybe sometimes you're just a bit scared to have a crack yourself on you, and you just need to back yourself and make it happen, and probably having the security blanket of being at Canterbury Rugby and doing all these other things has just been too good for the last 5 or so years. So now it's time to get out and make it happen.
I think you make a good point though, but also if you think about where, was it the Hurricanes and Canterbury or Canterbury Crusaders that when you live streamed and you had 48. Was it?
Yeah, 480,000
people. Success leaves clues there, right? Like,
sure.
And I think, but one of the things I really think there's, because sport is changing and kids' sport is changing, there's real opportunities in, even like the likes of the Muddy Cup and stuff like that, right? Like streaming events like that. All these, there's heaps of other things today that people want to see and be involved in. Where, 10 years ago, rugby, cricket, netball. That was it.
The interesting thing at the moment is there's still a massive, massive market in between tier 1 and tier 2 broadcasts for mainstream sports. But certainly I can't see us doing the All Blacks in a hurry, but recently we did the Football Ferns game here in Christchurch, 2 games back to back, 7 cameras, virtual graphics, off-site commentary, on-site presenters delivered to TVNZ, China TV and FIFA Plus in Switzerland. So, and it was all delivered by the internet. So, and the cost for us to be there, I don't know what it was. It was around let's say it was with 25 grand, and our competitors might have been 85 grand to do that. So for well, there's lots of margin in there. It's just getting people to understand that you can continually deliver to that same level, get some runs on the board, and then once you've got them,
because all they'll be worried about is the production quality, right? And is it of standard? Will people? And you've obviously proven that it is, which is kind of cool, right?
I think the other part too is as people watch changes. We've gone really heavy. 10 to 12 years ago, everyone was getting a 72-inch screen and they were blowing it up and it needed to be 4K and stuff. A large proportion of your content is now getting consumed on your mobile phone or an iPad. So you don't actually need it 4K because especially if it's on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, you're talking 720p, so it's minute.
I was talking to a guy the other day. He watched the what are they in Wellington? Is it the Phoenix? He watched it on his phone. The semi-final on the phone.
100%. No, it's a friend of ours talked about that, and she works in television too. She came back the other day, and his son said, I'm going to go watch a movie tonight. And so she expected him to go into their TV room and watch it on this big screen, and yet he grabbed the laptop and went and sat in his room and watched it on there. So people's consumption of content will continually shift. The better you can make it, absolutely, but the cost, you no longer do you need a satellite to shift big pieces of of media.
Yeah.
And just that big systems to house all that stuff in the future will continually get less and less, and it will become, like even now, an organisation like Sky that's listed will have to report on their carbon emissions in the future.
Yeah, sure.
So they will have to turn around and say, well, how am I producing this content for less or doing less, or you'll get taxed on it.
Yeah.
So the market will change.
Yeah.
It will definitely change.
I think also the content, you can probably be a little bit better too, you know, as far as you start to build the people, the characters inside the sport as well. And I think the All Blacks did that really well in the late 80s around some of the trips they did to over on tours, and they had the good, the bad, the ugly, and some of that content was filmed on a Handycam.
Yeah.
And it's probably some of the best footage there, you know, like they were before their time as far as
Rick Salizzo,
the content they were giving to people was what people really wanted. They just wanted to see the real All Blacks, you know.
Well, interesting thing was the Super Rugby Aupiki final on TikTok not that long ago, but they learned out of that just in itself, is that all of a sudden when the ball's not on screen, you have to deliver something else.
Yeah.
So it's a different audience. I'm still a little bit unsure how they really monetize it in the future, but just even that in itself, we're talking, what is it, Gogglebox or things like that, but people watching TV is just somewhat interesting to people now, isn't it? So is that the future? Is the future actually cutting to people's living rooms when there's a break in play, and then you get to say, so do you even need to be at a stadium? Do you not? How do we interact and bring you as part of the experience, not just the broadcast?
And I think that's the real key part to be the thinking part of it is the experience. You know, what is the experience that people want? You did a trip to the US recently, and I saw you going to a few events. What were you trying to learn there? What were any big takeaways you were?
There was a quick whirlwind trip doing a baseball NBA, the league in Vegas, and a U2 concert. I just really wanted to go back to the eyes of a fan. When I order a drink, what does it come? What does it come in? How does it come? Is it coming in a sustainable cup? Is it not? Is it big? Is it small? How am I paying for it? Same thing. What does halftime entertainment look like? We get really hung up on what else are we supplying to people in high performance sport, but I often want to ask the question too: is 80 minutes of rugby enough? Or do we actually owe you something for 15 minutes while you're sitting there at half time? Or there's a lot of what we do. Certainly in New Zealand, we take the money really early, but we sell the rights to other people. So, for example, Canterbury Rugby has no ability to influence whether VO supplies a hot dog or chips or whatever else at Apollo Project Stadium. So if you get there as a fan, effectively it was our product, being Canterbury Rugby at the time. That's what you're watching, but the food's dictated by somebody else. The toilets are dictated by somebody else. The parking's dictated by somebody else. The ticketing experience is dictated by somebody else. So all of those things that represent us as a brand, we've already shelved. I just wanted to go back and say, are other people doing it this way? Are they not? What are other sports doing? Is it afterwards? Is it beforehand? What does the entertainment look like? And that's, I think at the end of the day, that's the person that's going to decide what everything looks like as a fan. So spend some time being your customer, I suppose, would be the key part of that. Go and eat the food. Everyone's business is different, right? But spend time on the flip side of it rather than looking at it at your side and trying to solve somebody's problem, because you might not even know what the problem is.
Well, and that's the thing. I talk to business owners all the time. Have you bought from yourself recently? And most of them haven't, right? So get out your credit card and go buy something from you, especially if you've got it online. You need to learn where some of those gaps are.
That's why that undercover box is so interesting in TV program, because that's exactly what they're doing, is having a look under the hood.
Yeah, and I think, I remember Steve Chu when he was involved with the All Blacks, and he came out and said, hey, Canterbury, if you don't go to watch New Zealand, the All Blacks play Italy at I think it was Jade Stadium at the time, you'll struggle to get rugby games here in the future. So me and a mate, we went, and we had no intention of going because it was going to be cold that night, but we heard what he said, so we went along. They had Mark Hadlow playing opera music at halftime, and I just thought to myself, man, like, you've missed the point. The game was dreary as the weather was cold, but then you've missed the mark with someone singing opera. And there was a real misalignment there. And I just thought, I wonder if he really understands whose entertainment dollar it is. It's the guy in the stands, the girl in the stands. It's their entertainment dollar. And they're providing something to people that's just really poor, as far as I'd rather them not had anything at halftime, because I've got to just talk to my mates about what was going on,
Yeah, I think that's key, and the more information you can get back from your customer, the better, right? So we talk about that all the time. So you're surveying members, actually asking them, especially a member. A member is like evangelical about your brand, and they'll tell you whether they like it or hate it.
Yeah.
They're usually pretty honest. Majority of the time they love it, but they won't be scared in telling you when they don't. But you've got to actually ask them. And if you don't provide them the opportunity to ask them, then you'll never get that information back. So that could have been really key information. So great first message from Steve to say, get your backside a lot there. But then
we listened.
He didn't find out afterwards that actually I probably won't go back again next time. So
and it was a real, because I just think also like people's dollar, people, even like now, high inflation, high interest rates, recession. So people have decisions to make, right? And they vote with their money, right? If you look at, the Warriors at the moment, up the Wars, coming to Christchurch, boom, sellout stadium. I haven't met a person that wasn't there that was buzzing about that, So the product's good, Was the chips and the sausages and the hot dogs that good? Probably not. Like it's not world class, but does it need to be world class?
Yeah, it's an interesting measure on that, isn't it? Because our crowd at being Canterbury Rugby, our crowd in the stadium would be on average about 4,000 over the last couple of years. I took a game, and I'll say because I absolutely led it to Rangiora last year. First time ever that Canterbury taken an NPC game out of there, nearly 7,000.
Yeah, so good.
So the product is still largely the same. And there it goes back to your old marketing, is it?
Yeah.
Product placement, price, all those other things. There's an element to the Warriors at that point as league hadn't been here for a long time and all that other stuff. Could you do it for 14 weeks of a year and all those other things would be questionable.
Totally.
But absolutely, full power to them. Like, how many teams are selling out a stadium every week in Auckland?
Every week in Auckland.
And they are absolutely doing that. Is that a tailwind from not being here for COVID and all those other things? So you just got to take all that information in when you make a decision, right? On what the next move is. But
instantly enough, though, the Broncos are getting 50,000 to a game. Like the league's on a bit of a high when it comes to that.
The game's great to watch.
Yeah,
try being a South fan. She's a struggle.
We won't go there. Hey, so you've obviously well educated yourself and teaching yourself some things. What sort of books do you read? Like, what are you into for educating yourself?
Yeah, I'm not a massive reader, or when I do, I try and consume it as fast as I can. I was kind of a naughty kid at school and probably didn't stay at school long enough to really get through all of that stuff. So I'm a big listener.
Nice.
High Performance Podcasts with Jake Humphries. And,
nice.
Damien Hughes, I find really intriguing, and that they just go into all sorts of areas. So I've got one kid that plays a massive amount of sport, and the other one that's really into Highland dancing. He's actually quite good at Highland dancing, but he applies the same principles. So that is my other kid does for his sport.
What age?
10 and 7.
Brilliant.
Yeah. But he goes, he's pretty handy for a 7-year-old. Actually woke up one day, watched it on What Now and said, I want to do that. And
nice.
It's been his introduction to it. James Lachlan, I think around high performance is another one that, around that lead on purpose is his podcast. And I think he does a really good job to talk about elevating yourself out and, again, thinking of others and doing that sort of stuff a lot. The last book that I read cover to cover in a couple of days was Eddie Jones's book on leadership.
Oh, yeah.
And I think one of the reasons that I really got into it was I was in the UK at the time when he had taken over the England rugby team, and I saw all of that stuff happen. And you turn up to a press conference, and it kind of solved a lot of the glaring things to me. But my favourite book, and I would have to say that everyone just has to read it, is Absolutely Belonging by Owen Eastwood.
Yeah, nice.
I think once you understand why or how or what that element of psyche is, and there's some real ancient stuff in there, right?
How good.
I think it's just so, if you can speak to someone's psyche around why they do something and create that connection, that brand loyalty and all those other things, and you understand that, you're in there, absolutely. I'm doing, as you mentioned, I'm doing a mini MBA at the moment too, which I think is really cool. There's no way I could have taken a year or two off to go and do a full one, but to do a small one at the moment with a group called, the Marketing Week out of the UK, a guy called Mark Ritson, he publishes stories, I suppose, or all the time. So pretty deep in my reading with a lot of that at the moment.
Nice.
Mark speaks pretty clear language. I think it's and backs up his theory with lots of case studies, and I think they're probably key parts. But yeah, I often prefer to listen or just have conversations with people than get too deep with the reading.
Nice.
I've got to read it about 6 times over, but just to get my brain.
I know what you're saying. I like to listen to, readings sometimes. Yeah, I may be a little bit like dyslexic in parts. I have to read back, and then if I listen to it and read it, get it a lot easier.
Yeah.
I think that came from reading at school, where they just made you read weird stuff, like Animal Farm and stuff like that, which just have no relevance to.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I sit down with Harry, my youngest, all the time, and you get him a book that he doesn't like, and he just pretends to be an idiot. If he goes and picks a book himself, he can do a really good job at it. So, yeah.
Hey, so if you look, and you kind of are doing this, if you're starting again, and you're knowing what you know now about media and things that are going on in the marketing space, what would you do? What are 5 things that you'd really look at doing, knowing what you know now?
That good.
I'll put you on the spot, by the way.
Yeah. I would do my research.
Yep.
I think absolutely the more you know about a brand or a system or a process or something like that is sets you up for that. I would develop relationships and extensive relationships that have, if not two-way value, a win-win-win.
Yeah.
Everyone wins out of it.
I think that's real key, eh?
Yeah, 100%. Because you get invited back.
Yeah.
I think it's a key part. It's one thing to do business with somebody once. It's another thing to do with them multiple times.
Yeah. So good.
It's easy to say that you do something that you're passionate about, but I think lots of people find passion, and then all of a sudden, when they have to do it every day of the week, it falls out. So I'm not even sure if that would be it, but I'd find something that you're good at.
Yeah.
And just try and be better at it.
And I think to that point, like you sometimes, because I get it, some people, you got to do what you're passionate about, but you might be passionate at something, but it make you any money. And then so all of a sudden you've got this passionate thing that makes you no money.
You're hungry.
And you're hungry all the time, right? Where, like if you can find there's an equilibrium between something that you're good at and you can monetize, then that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, totally. Yep. And that might be the thing, isn't it? You might do something that prepares you or sets you up for the thing that you are good at or want to spend time. We talked about relationships. I just maintain relationships, grow those. And I'd say get started.
Yeah.
And I know I'm probably preaching to myself at the moment about just I need to kick up the backside and get on with it. But like, what's kind of the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
If you can stay in your own job for 6 months and hate it. Also it depends on whether we're starting again at 40 or starting in the industry at 20 with all that information.
Yeah. The cool thing, and when you look at what your situation is, what you got to remember is people will pay for your past. You have a wealth of experience there that is developed and developing, and people will pay for that. And I know this from experience. People will pay for my past. So when you say get started, you're not actually just getting started. You're getting there's some degree getting started, but actually people know that you've got a path. They know you've got experience, so they buy into that. There's value there.
Yeah, I think it's as much about if it's this, you've decided that's what you're going to do. Just make it
going.
Yeah, I would probably get to the point. Try and free up as many things as you can in order to be able to spend more time on the things that you want.
Yeah.
Whether it's you've got to invest in a nanny. We've actually done that between my wife and I this year.
Nice.
Spend a bit more time. The kids are getting less time from us, which is absolutely, we understand that and appreciate that, but they're also not missing out on all the other things that they would have got. So they still get, rugby and swimming and whatever else. Get in there and roll your sleeves up and don't be afraid to put your shoulder to the wheel, because if effort will be required, there's no doubt about it. It's pretty fluky for people to get something that doesn't get a reward without too much effort.
Yeah, you got to put the effort in, eh?
Yeah.
Hey, so that was good. Do the research. I'm going to ask you one more question too. So you might also want to think about it while I recap. What's your best ever business advice? So start thinking about that. But you said there research, and I think that's really, really key. Like you've got to, I'd say you've got to design the strategy to pick the tactics to produce the results you want. And part of that is that strategy. You've got to do the research. You've got to do your audience research. You've got to do your products research. You've got to do your market research. There's a number of things that you've actually got to have on your side if you're going to win. develop relationships. I think you nailed it there. You know, you'll get away with doing business with someone once if you don't build that relationship. If you don't go deep, you're not getting invited back to the table. Your strategy around it, or your philosophy around the supermarket was a brilliant one, right? Because, you know, we've all seen people in the supermarket that we've kind of ducked away from because you don't want them, right? So that was a great example of that, because I think it's really, you know, get good at it, get started, and invest in people that free up your time. You know, like your kids aren't missing out just because you've got a nanny. They're getting the best of you. You know, versus because you're being able to spend your time when you do see them really, really well, and take care of them that way. So it's 5 great things to get started. So I really appreciate you sharing them. Now, here's the thing. We've got our podcast 100th episode coming up, and I've been asking the people that have been on the podcast their best business advice. So this section of here, people will hear it on the podcast, but they'll also hear it on the 100th episode. So George Berry, knowing what you know now, what has been your best business advice, or what would you say to someone?
I would say focus on what you're good at.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, the chances of you getting better at those things are significantly higher.
Yep.
The chances are you're improving something that you're not good at invariably don't come with lots of drive and intention to make them better.
Yeah.
So do the things that you are good at, and then find the other people around you to fill those other holes.
Yeah, so true.
I think that's how you build a team. And it was interesting. I was listening to something a while ago, and it was about how the British had designed their teams in the army, and it was like a 2, 4, 8, 30.
Yeah.
And it really set for me on that point. So the 2 at the top have got to have a set of skills, right? And then the next 4 have another set of skills, and you just layer that in. But if you were trying to do what the 30 were trying to do, then who's doing the 2? Yeah. So absolutely do what you're good at, and find other people then that are equally as good at the stuff that you're not.
Yeah, and I think also to that, because it's great advice, is stay in that lane that what you're good at.
Yeah, there's no point me going and milking somebody's cow.
Yeah, because a lot of times you find people have got good at something, and then all of a sudden you come back to like 3 years later and they're doing something else. It's like, hang on, and you go ask it, it's going, it's not going as well, and they're trying to do 2 things where they just focus on what they're good at, and then I always say employ your weakness. You know, so there's a bunch of people here in my office here that are so much better at a lot of stuff than me, because I realise what I'm good at is probably 3 things, and the rest of that I just need to employ. And it's so refreshing, right?
Yeah, 100%. You enjoy it that much more too, right?
Yeah.
The same. I'm not a camera operator. No. But I'm a really good storyteller, or I can connect with things and make it happen. So be in the front of the camera rather than the back of the camera, you can still get the same product. Yeah. Absolutely. Work on the things that you're good at, and surround yourself with other people. And the coolest part is there's other people out there that want to do what you don't do. And once I discovered that, I thought, wow, there's other people that like doing like long form copywriting, or they like going out outside and shooting short form video content, where I don't want to do that. Totally. But there are other people that do. I thought that was the coolest. Yeah. You imagine if you get 1,000 people around you that are all passionate about it, the environment's so much better, right? And that's I think the coolest thing when you start to develop that around people. You're focused on what you're good at. You've got people doing what they're good at. Yeah, it's a real win-win. Do you think Dan Carter spent lots of time on working out how to throw in the line out? No. But if he had to, he'd be okay at it. But he wouldn't be the greatest at it. Not at all. You know, he's not very good at holding a scrum up. So don't ask him. Yeah, so good. Hey, man, this has been a great chat. Really appreciate you coming in. Appreciate the time. Yeah, and great business advice. I really that's going to be a good one on the 100th episode. Hey, guys and girls, really appreciate you being and listening on the podcast today and watching. As always, how do people get hold of you, by the way? Because people are going to want to get hold of you. How do they get hold of you? It's just a bit of a secret, I suppose, isn't it? Probably you just hit me up on LinkedIn. Do you know, here's something for you. That's a wee funny story. We're just having a conversation around another opportunity that exists at the moment with a New Zealand-based team. Yep. And the opportunity was publicised a couple of years ago on LinkedIn. So I messaged a recruiter and said, hey, could be interested to chat. I don't have a CV. This is on about a Thursday. If I make one up over the weekend and send it to you, would you be interested? And the particular person looked at my LinkedIn profile and said, no, you don't have the skills. Please don't waste your time. Subsequently, the role's now come up again, and another recruiter that's now got it has nominated me for it, and I'm down to the final 2 to have a conversation around it. So I would say don't get hung up on people's LinkedIn profiles because, reach out to them, have conversations. People send you ads all the bloody time on LinkedIn, and you delete them when you don't want to talk to them or whatever else. So in short, you'll find me, George Berry on LinkedIn is probably the safest place. But don't get hung up on someone's LinkedIn profile and think that's all they are.
Exactly. Hey, by the way, we'll put the links into the podcast show notes, and so if you want to hook up with George, you'll be able to. Hey, but what I was saying is, really appreciate you being here. Today, I want you to do one thing, and that's just share the podcast. We're getting some really cool things happening when we're sharing the podcast. We're getting people calling us, wanting to do some work with them, but also we're getting people to connect with our guests as well, which has been really, really awesome. So the more we can share the podcast, the more people we can reach, the more people we can help. And in times like this, we really need to help as many people. So, George, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Got any last wise words to leave people with?
No, I like those comments on the bottom of your emails. Is this take action?
Have fun and take action.
There you go.
So we'll leave you with that today. Go and have some fun and go and take some action. Thanks for your time.